Hi, everybody. Welcome to the weekly Wisdom for Parents lesson that we are going to do this week. I'm Melanie Soloway.
I'm Deanna Gail Imad.
And we're very excited to be here with you because what we're going to talk about today is talking and communication. In our support group this morning with our parents, communication came up as a topic of conversation in the context of both listening to our kids or that our kids don't listen to us, as well as within the context of couples communication, right? Whether you're actually in a couple and co-parenting with your partner as a partner that you are currently with, or in terms of co-parenting with an ex-partner or an ex-spouse, or actually someone was in the group where they are parenting with someone who they were never actually married to, but share a child. And so communication in all of these contexts is so important. And one of the things that we really unpacked was this concept of communication when we, in terms of the context of our kids, and we say our kids aren't listening, really what we're often saying is our kids aren't doing what we're telling them to do. So it's not that they're not listening, it's that they're not complying. They're not taking the marching orders. And so we really want to step this back to what does it mean to listen? And the reality is that a lot of the time as parents, we are the ones that are not listening. We are the ones that are giving the orders and expecting them to just do and comply, and they don't feel heard and they don't feel understood. And that happens in partnerships too. We don't feel heard and we don't feel understood. And when human beings, it's a basic human need. When we don't feel heard and understood, oftentimes we're going to act out.
One of the things, Mel, that I notice these days with all of technology and everything going on is that one of the questions I ask myself is, do I have their attention? Because if you're talking to someone in passing or they're on their device or they're doing something else, you don't really have their attention. So you don't know if they really are listening or hearing you, or they didn't hear you, or they just don't want to do it.
I love that. And Deanna, I don't know if it's me, my love, or not, but I'm going to ask you just to speak up a little bit. I don't know if it, just I'm I had a little bit of a hard, you sound a little soft to me. But on that note, I remember when my kids were little, right? And they were toddlers or parents would come through my classes and they would be like, yeah, like they were shouting, into the other room, like, come and eat your breakfast. We need to put on our shoes. We need to go. And then like, my kid's not listening to me. I'm like, well, if your kid is in the other room playing Legos and they're concentrating on their Legos, they truly may not be like exactly what you're saying. It's not just with devices, right? Or like we'll come into a room and I'll be on and talking about devices. I'll be doing something and someone will just start talking to me, but I can't concentrate on what they're saying because my brain is focused on something else. So one of the things that I've taught for many, many years is to actually go up to our children or to someone and possibly put your hand on their body, like on their shoulder or their arm or their, or just wait until they look up, right? Because now you know that we have their attention and they're engaging with us. So I think that's a beautiful and brilliant point that you're making and really important.
I think once you know that you have their attention, and then it's great to be, clearly communicate what you want to say to them. And then you can check with them and say, what did you hear me say?
And why that's important is because oftentimes when we listen, we're not listening to understand, right? We're just listening to respond. And when we just listen to respond, oftentimes we anticipate where we think the person is going. And then we answer where we think they're going, which is not where we're actually heading. And it's a very frustrating communication. But when we wait, like you and I have both been trained. So like I'm even watching you, like you really are taking in the words that I'm saying and really listening to what my point is before you're going to make your point. And I'm doing the same thing, but I see this so much in communication, both with our kids and inside of couples.
Yes, definitely. I use this communication skill with my couples regularly because it's very helpful to teach them, one, to take personal responsibility through making I statements when they're speaking, and to give their partner an opportunity to repeat back what they heard them say and really check out, like, did you hear what I said? And am I with you? Do you understand what I said? Right. So you create more empathy instead of responding in a defensive mode of, I didn't, or defending against the communication. It's more like, let me really hear you and repeat back what I heard you say and make sure I'm with you. And it starts to create such a caring and empathetic relationship between the two that they start to understand each other and really start to get, oh, I really see where you're coming from. And
Right.
really helpful.
Yeah. And if I can just take it even a little further, just unpack a little bit more with what you said, which you said use I statements, because that's absolutely something that we teach parents to do with kids too, right? To teach kids about conflict resolution with siblings or with friends. But it's also what we can do in our own relationships to model this. And so oftentimes what we do in our communication is, and I'm just going to use an example, but I might say, you know, to a partner, to a friend, like if I was saying to you, you know, you really disrespected me, Deanna, you really disrespected me. I'm pointing at you, and as I point to you, 3 fingers are pointing back at me, right? And then when I say to you, you did whatever it is I'm accusing you of doing, you're going to feel defensive, right? Versus if I say to you instead, you know, Deanna, when you spoke to me that way, I felt really disrespected.
Yes. And I would ask you to say more about that. And I'd also say, please tell me more about that. So I could really understand what I said that you interpreted as disrespect, because that's was not my intention, but I wanted to make sure you were able to communicate what you wanted to share.
Right. And so if I would have follow up with that and say, well, and obviously this is a made up situation, but if I were to say to you, well, when you know, I was talking and you cut me off in the middle of what I was saying, and, you know, you didn't let me finish, like I felt really disrespected.
And what I would say is, what I heard you say is, I cut you off in the middle of something that you were saying, and you felt disrespected. Am I with you on that?
Yes.
Great. Tell me more.
So yeah, like you know, this is something from when I was a child, I would get cut off, you know, like I was the youngest of 4 kids. And so every time I was speaking, I never got my chance to say what I was saying, and I would get cut off. And it was really disrespectful. And so when you did that to me, like when you acted that way, it was triggering for me.
So what I heard you say is, when you were a child, you had this similar feeling when you were talking and you were the youngest of 4, that you would get cut off, and it sounded to me like no one's interested in what you had to say, or you felt that way. Am I with you?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. Helps me understand what's going on for you. And I'm going to be more mindful about giving you the space to fully get your thoughts out. Does that work for you?
Love that. So you can see, guys, how when you do that, now I really felt heard, right? I realized, like, if I would have just said you were disrespectful, and Deanna wasn't being disrespectful, but she didn't understand or realize that's how I was interpreting it, which came from a trigger from my own childhood, right? But in this context, she can now understand, and what it's going to do is build our relationship together so that we have much better communication and understanding. And Deanna, I'm curious, you know, in that context, I might at that point also just add the repair and say, you know, I'm sorry that it made you feel that way. That wasn't my intention. Like, how do you feel about that?
Um, I think that in appropriate circumstances is great.
Because that was the one thing that I felt was like I would have appreciated hearing. In that, you know, I was like waiting. I was like, where's the, you know, where's the makeup of the above? And it's not that I was expecting it necessarily, but I was thinking about it. It came to my mind, and I was like, well, that's something else that I, you know, and again, when we teach these, that's something else. Let me finish my sentence. Blah, 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 good communication. That was something that I was thinking, right? Like that I might do in this role play of a scenario. And when we give examples inside of the role plays, there are different things that we're going to think of. And these are all coulds. These aren't something that we should do or we must do. It just opens up our awareness as to what we could do or what we can do to improve our communication and really our connection and our relationships.
Well, I think that's really great, Mel. I appreciate that. That we are looking to have better communication and teach others to do that as well.
Yeah. So thank you all so much for being part of the weekly wisdom. And I hope that this communication lesson was very clear. And next week, we are really excited because we're going to be doing our weekly support parent group at noon Pacific time on Zoom in a virtual room. And we'll actually be doing, the format is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be teaching a lesson at the beginning of the group. As we come into the room, it may be a live lesson, it may be a pre-recorded lesson, so that our parents will have an opportunity to ask questions and send in questions ahead of time to us as well. And that we'll be able to be there to support you. So we're really looking forward to that and hope that you will join us in our Raising Enlightened Children Facebook group. Come there where we have more discussions and there's lots of recordings of previous lessons, and join us. There'll be support. The link to that support group will go in right before noon next Tuesday, the 23rd, and we hope you'll join us then.
It goes into the comments section, just so you know where to look for it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.